My name is Ariana, 39 years old, and I live in Boston with my husband and our two children. My life seemed to have finally found its calm until one message from the bank came at the cruelest possible moment, almost making me drop the glass of wine in my hand. That day was my younger sister Vanessa's engagement party, held at a five-star hotel in Miami. Scented candles, a string quartet, red wine, everything was staged perfectly like a dream. But when my phone lit up, the notification appeared. Your trust account has a transaction, minus $124,700. I froze. Looking up at the stage, I saw my mother raising her glass in a toast, while Vanessa beamed in a bridal gown worth nearly a year of college tuition. No one but me knew. They had stolen my money to build this glamorous event. What they didn't realize was that I already knew, and I had set a trap. Have you ever been deceived by those dearest to you only for them to turn around and pretend nothing ever happened? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this story, because what happened next, you would not believe with your own eyes. I was born and raised in a small town in northern Texas, where summers scorch the skin and winters cut straight to the bone. The old pale blue wooden house at the end of a dusty dirt road was where Vanessa and I grew up under one roof, but with two very different fates. My parents divorced when I was just 11. I still remember that night, my father carrying a suitcase out the door in silence. No hug, no glance back. My mother stood in the living room, clutching Vanessa, who was wailing uncontrollably. I stood frozen by the staircase, chest tight, but no tears would fall. After that night, my father disappeared from our lives. My mother never spoke of him again, except for bitter remarks whenever she thought I looked or acted too much like him. She hated that, as if my very existence was a constant reminder of her failed marriage. Meanwhile, Vanessa, 3 years younger, became the center of her universe. I don't call Vanessa a bad person. She was simply raised in a world where everything was laid out for her, from princess dresses to the dream my mother painted since she was a child. Grow up pretty, marry rich, and never worry about work or money. As for me, I grew up in silence. By 12, I was cooking meals, washing clothes, working part-time at a grocery store to help with bills, then coming home to piles of homework. My mother never called me princess. To her, I was the responsible one, the she-can-handle-it child, the fallback whenever she needed something done. I remember once having such a high fever I could barely stand, yet she dragged me to a flea market to help sell old clothes because she needed cash fast for Vanessa's summer camp. And when I earned a full scholarship to college, she only nodded and said flatly, "Good. Take care of yourself. That's one less thing for me to worry about." No words cut deeper than those. Vanessa was different. She was sweetheart, my angel, the reason my mother smiled every morning. On weekends, while I worked, the two of them went out for manicures, movies, dinners at places I had never stepped foot in. I told myself I wasn't jealous, but deep down, there was a hollow space that never got filled. I'll never forget my 17th birthday. I didn't ask for anything, just silently wished my mother would ask what I wanted or at least give me a hug. Instead, Vanessa was taken to a professional portrait studio because, as Mom said, she's starting high school, we need to capture this milestone. I sat at home, reheated stale bread from the fridge, lit a tiny candle, and sang to myself. I studied hard not to outshine anyone, but because I believed education was the only way out of the narrow life my mother mapped out for me. In senior year, I applied to 3 major universities and got into all of them. One offered me a full scholarship in economics at a prestigious school in Boston. I still remember my mother's reaction when I showed her the acceptance letter. "Good. Now I don't have to worry about you. Take care of yourself." I forced a smile, packed my bags, and left behind the house I once thought meant family. Vanessa stayed. She didn't apply to college, saying school wasn't for her. My mother didn't argue. Instead, she used savings, most of it money I sent home from internships, to pay for Vanessa's makeup courses, cosmetics, and photo shoots for Instagram. She called it an investment in the future. I didn't argue. I just kept wiring money, afraid that if I didn't, they wouldn't survive. People may think I was foolish, but when the only person you call mother has turned her back on you since childhood, you'll understand the desperate hunger to feel loved, even just a little. I lived with that hope all through my youth and early adulthood. Every call from my mother came with a request: hospital bills, phone bills, rent, fixing a leaking roof, and most recently, money to renovate the house quickly before the groom's family visits. Hearing that pulled me straight back to childhood, that constant demand, the pressure, the assumption that my duty was to pay for everything, while my presence never counted as part of the family picture. I wasn't that 11-year-old girl anymore, but the ache of being treated as an outsider in my own home never went away. And that day, when I saw Vanessa on stage at her engagement, white gown glowing under golden lights, my mother smiling like she had fulfilled a lifelong dream, I realized that dream had been stitched together with my money, my tears, and my trust, and I was ready to rip the curtain down. I was in my senior year at Boston when an unknown number called. A man's voice asked softly, "Ariana, are you the daughter of James Whitaker?" My phone nearly slipped from my hand. It had been more than 10 years since my father left. 10 years without a text, a call, not even a holiday postcard. 10 years I believed he chose to vanish forever, as if I had never existed. But now, someone was telling me he was in a treatment center outside Chicago, and he wanted to see me, immediately. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it was the emptiness inside me that never healed. Maybe I still longed for an explanation. I caught the cheapest flight that night. My father lay frail on a hospital bed, so thin and pale I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was silver and unkempt, his voice raspy, but his eyes, those were the same eyes etched in my memory from nights he carried me to sleep as a child. "You've grown," he whispered, looking at me like something priceless had returned after being lost too long. I sat beside him, torn between anger and hurt. Why now? After all these years? He studied me for a long moment before answering, voice steady, "Because I don't have much time left, and there are things I must do before I go." He had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said months. I sat by his bed for hours as he recounted everything: his marriage to my mother, suspicions, disappointments, exhaustion. He admitted it was a mistake to leave without a word, to let me grow up in emptiness. "You are the one thing I can't forgive myself for," he said, tears brimming. "Because I left you in the hands of people I never trusted." I couldn't cry. My pain had calcified into stone around my heart. But when he handed me a thick folder stamped with a bank seal, my hands trembled. "This is the trust account I created after selling the rest of the company," he said. $500,000. Your name only, no one else can touch it. Use it to rebuild your life, protect your family, and hold your fans. Ground. I flipped the pages, saw my name in bold, Ariana Whitaker, sole beneficiary. "Why me?" I asked, eyes still on the paper. He smiled faintly, face hollow but firm. "Because you're the only one in this family who stands on her own feet. Vanessa may be indulged, but you are the strong one. And because I know your mother, and she will never stop trying to drag you down. Don't let your kindness become a noose around your neck." I stayed until the nurse came with his IV. On my way back to the hotel, I clutched the folder tight. Pain, gratitude, and an unshakable dread churned inside me. Weeks later, he passed. In his will, my name was the only one mentioned. My mother never knew. Vanessa was too busy staging photos for her so-called influencer brand to notice. Neither showed up at the funeral, though I had sent them the message. I thought I'd keep it secret, but the calls began. At first, just checking in, then complaints about the air conditioner breaking, the leaking roof, unpaid hospital bills. The requests multiplied. A month after the funeral, my mother texted, "Come back to Houston, the family needs a long talk." I declined, blaming work. Days later, Vanessa called for the first time in years. Her voice softer than usual, asking how I was, complimenting a family photo of me, Michael, and the kids. I stayed silent, waiting. Then it came. "I have something to ask." And I was ready. She talked about her engagement to Ryan, a young lawyer from a wealthy family. "Mom says our house is too old, we can't host the groom's family there. I know I have no right to ask, but if you could help." I took a deep breath. "I'll help. But I won't wire money directly to you or Mom." "You don't trust us?" She tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "I'll oversee every expense. I'll set up a separate account and transfer in installments." She hesitated, then agreed. I hung up, looked over at Michael sitting with his newspaper. He folded it when he met my eyes. "What is it?" "It's time," I said. "I'll give them one chance. Their last chance." Michael walked over, hand on my shoulder. "And you won't give them another?" I nodded. Inside me there was no anger anymore, only clarity. The clarity my father spent his final days trying to give me, and I wasn't going to waste it. I married Michael in the fall of my 28th year, a simple garden wedding by an old church in Cambridge, just close friends and family, no imported roses, no choir, no glittering gown. But that day, I felt more peace than ever. Michael is a quiet, steady man, eyes that see everything without rushing to judge. He works in finance, sharp with numbers, yet always leaves me my own space. He never pried into my family, but I knew he was always watching, always waiting to step in if I needed him. When we moved into our small Boston home, life seemed to finally align: steady jobs, a warm home, dinners glowing under soft yellow light. But that calm didn't last long. The calls from my mother started coming again, steady as March rain. Sometimes she said she was tired, that the doctor suspected high blood pressure and she needed a full checkup. Other times it was a burst pipe in the bathroom that required an emergency plumber. One day she even called in tears, saying Vanessa had collapsed at work from exhaustion. I didn't ask many questions. I just sent money. At first 200, then 500, and eventually sometimes thousands. Some months I sent money 3 or 4 times, each time for a different reason. "Have you ever actually seen the bills?" Michael asked one evening as we were folding laundry in the living room. I paused, looking at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, have you ever received an actual bill? Or is it always just what she says on the phone?" I thought about it, and the truth was, never. Every time Mom told me a story, my only question was, "How much?" Then I wired the money. I never asked for a photo of an invoice, never asked anyone to verify. Michael studied me for a while, then spoke gently. "I don't want to see you get hurt, but I think you need to be sure your kindness isn't being taken advantage of." I turned away, clutching the pile of clothes against my chest. His words weren't judgment, but they stung. I didn't want to believe my mother could do that. Not after everything I had tried to do. A few weeks later, I came home earlier than usual. While waiting for Michael to finish cooking dinner, I pulled up my bank app to review recent transactions. One charge made me frown. $3,200 withdrawn 2 weeks ago, right after Mom had said she needed money to repair termite damage in the roof. I called the bank for details. They confirmed the money had been transferred to an account belonging to Butte Clinic and Spa, a high-end beauty clinic in Houston. I sat frozen, my hand gripping the phone tight. A minute later, I searched for the clinic online. It was a luxury place offering skincare packages, fillers, laser rejuvenation, and collagen threading procedures costing more than $2,500 per session. It felt like someone had thrown ice water in my face. That evening, I didn't say a word to Michael. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I just went silent, as though the world had stopped moving. When Michael set down a steaming plate of pasta and saw my eyes, he gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, but my throat closed up. After dinner, I texted my mother, "Mom, which company did the roof repairs you mentioned? My husband needs the info for year-end tax paperwork." She read it and replied, 3 minutes later, "I don't remember the company's name. I'll look for the invoice and send it later." I didn't answer. 3 days passed, and nothing came. I pulled up the past 6 months of transfers. The total was over $17,000. At least 3 charges went to accounts tied to that beauty clinic. Michael stood behind me as I typed each transaction into a spreadsheet. "What are you going to do next?" I didn't reply right away. My eyes stopped at the most recent charge, $5,600, transferred to an event planning company. I turned to him. "I think they're getting ready for a wedding I haven't even been invited to." Michael frowned. "Are you sure?" "I'm not sure, but I'm not going to sit and wait until the bill lands in my lap." I opened my laptop, logged into the bank system, and created a sub-account. I linked it to an ATM card with withdrawal limits and real-time spending alerts. Then I moved a small sum into it, just enough for them to think I was still helping. And for the first time in years, I hit send without my heart aching. It didn't feel like guilt. It felt like clarity. That morning, as I got the kids ready for school, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed. "Mom." I stared at it a long moment before answering. Her voice came through, hoarse, as if she had just finished crying. "Ariana, I had no choice but to call you." I exhaled, motioning for Michael to take the kids to the car. The door closed behind me, leaving the kitchen empty except for her voice in my ear. "The roof. It leaks everywhere. Tiles are falling off. Vanessa's about to get engaged, and our house looks like a shack. She's embarrassed, doesn't even want to invite her fiancé inside. I don't know what to do." I leaned against the counter, staring out the fogged window. "How much do you need?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. 80,000. Just to fix the exterior, the roof, and the living room. I already asked around. "I promise I'll pay you back in installments if you'll just lend it." I tilted my head back, forcing my voice to stay even. "Mom, I can't send such a large transfer at once. I'll send it in smaller amounts, in stages." There was silence on the other end, then a sigh of relief. "Yes, in stages is fine. Thank you. I didn't want to bother you, but the groom's family is coming soon." I hung up, standing motionless in the kitchen, my hand squeezing the phone until my knuckles turned white. Michael walked back in, saw my face, and stepped closer. "Another call?" I nodded, setting the phone on the table and opening my laptop. I'm not letting them touch the trust. But if they want to keep trying, they'll walk straight into the trap I built. I created another sub-account, naming it Houston Support, a brand new account under my control, with full spending reports and transaction history. I didn't tell Mom that. I just said it was a separate account for convenience from Boston. The first deposit, $10,000. A week later, Mom texted, "Thank you. I had the contractor come out. They said they'll start next week." I checked the tracking app. The money was withdrawn the very next day, not to any construction company, but to Golden Leaf Catering, a high-end restaurant in Western Houston, specializing in weddings and engagements. I didn't call her. I just kept watching. The second week, Mom texted again. "The contractor says they need another deposit to hold the date. I'm afraid if we delay, they'll take another job." I sent another 7,000 through the sub-account. 3 days later, an alert popped up. A new payment, $6,500 to Heavenly Blooms Decor. This time, I didn't stay silent. I called Lauren, my old college friend, now working in event planning in Houston. Do you still have contacts in the wedding business there? Of course. Why? Can you check if Golden Leaf and Heavenly Blooms are handling any weddings in the next 2 months for a client named Vanessa Whitaker? Lauren went quiet for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. Ariana, do you want the truth? I need the truth. Yes, Vanessa Whitaker. Groom is Ryan Clark, a lawyer fairly well known. We signed them 3 weeks ago. The contract includes venue, catering, flowers, a band, and an outdoor stage design. I gripped the chair, my palms cold. And what did they say about funding? Lauren hesitated. Her mother signed the contract and said, the older sister will cover everything. They even provided your photo for confirmation, saying you wanted to stay private for personal reasons. A hollow laugh escaped my throat. Lauren's voice softened. Ariana, are you okay? I nodded, though she couldn't see. Thank you. Can you send me a copy of the contract if possible? I don't want to cause trouble. I just need to know. I hung up, sitting alone in the dim kitchen, picturing Mom and Vanessa strolling through showrooms, picking table linens, flowers, sampling cakes while I worked 12-hour days to raise 2 kids. I didn't feel sad or angry, just a chill running down my spine, as if a piece of me had split from them forever. I forwarded the spending info to my attorney, just in case. The next day, Mom texted again. The contractor says waterproofing costs extra. We need another $15,000. I replied briefly, I'll review the books this week. I'll send when I can. I didn't plan to send a thing, but I would keep them thinking I was still pliable. Because when that wedding cake stood on stage under glittering lights, I wanted them to understand the price of deceit. 3 weeks after my call with Lauren, she texted late one night. Attached was a photo taken through a glass pane. In it, Vanessa sat at a large table draped in white, hair in a bun, pastel off-shoulder dress, smiling brightly as she signed a thick stack of papers. We just closed a $200,000 wedding package, Lauren wrote. Still, Vanessa and Ryan. But this time at our main Miami branch, scheduled at the Fairmount Grand at the end of the month. She said her sister won't be attending, but my sister owes me, it's family blood. She has to pay. I sat frozen in my office, eyes locked on the screen, my chest heavy. Family blood means obligation. The phrase echoed in my head like a knife carving deep. I had never betrayed my sister. I sent her money for trade school when I couldn't afford new shoes for myself. I worked overnight shifts to send Mom money when the power went out in winter. I convinced myself love didn't need to be returned. But family blood, did that mean she had the right to demand $200,000 without caring if I could survive afterward? I called Lauren. Are you sure? My voice was hoarse. No mistake, she said firmly. I'm the lead planner. They were open about everything. Vanessa said from the start, my sister has a trust from our father. She'll pay for everything. She's owed me since the day I was born. I could barely breathe. Owed her what? Lauren paused, then spoke carefully, as if afraid to wound me further. Do you want the whole truth? I closed my eyes. Say it. Vanessa told our manager that the day your father died, he only called your name. Not your mother's, not hers. And that all assets were in your name. She said, my father chose her, my mother chose me. Now it's her turn to pay it back. I set the phone on the desk, not even ending the call, just holding my head in my hands. Pay it back? With the inheritance my father scraped together in his final years so I could live without constant struggle? Pay it back by staying silent, excluded from every decision, every family dinner, every gathering, yet still footing the bill. Lauren's voice came small through the line. I'm sorry for saying it out loud, but I think you needed to know. I don't think they understand what you've lived through all these years, I whispered. Thank you. I hung up, stepped out onto the balcony. Boston lay calm under yellow streetlights. In the distance, the Charles River moved quietly, like the sadness in me, not screaming, not raging, just cold and deep. Michael found me standing there and came close. You okay? I turned to him. Vanessa signed a $200,000 wedding contract in Miami. They're telling the world I'll be the one paying. He didn't ask anything more. He just wrapped his arms around me from behind, letting me lean into him, the way he always had. I rested my head on Michael's shoulder, my eyes burning, though no tears would fall. I won't let them keep doing this, I said quietly, each word sharp as cut stone. Michael nodded. What are you planning to do? Send a little more, I murmured. Let them believe I haven't suspected a thing, and when they step onto that stage, I'll step out one step ahead. Michael didn't answer, but I felt his hand close tighter around mine. That night, I opened the sub-account again. The balance was close to $30,000. I transferred another $5,000 without telling my mother. The next morning, the bank notification came as usual. A new payment, $4,800 at Velvet Rose Bridal, a boutique in Miami specializing in luxury wedding gowns and accessories. I stared at the transaction description. Custom-made gown, exclusive design. Vanessa had never intended to restrain herself. For her, this was a chance to stand tall in front of the elite. And me, unknowingly, I was the patron of that fantasy. I picked up my phone and texted my attorney, began drafting confirmation of breach of trust regarding the account. No need to file yet, just complete the paperwork. I need control. I thought of my father. He had warned me in that cold hospital room, when he placed the trust fund papers in my hands. You'll have to learn how to say no without feeling guilty. And I was learning, slowly but steadily. With every new charge, the guilt was gone. What I felt now was clarity. And what I planned next wasn't revenge. It was to show them no one could use blood ties to force another to abandon herself. I spent the afternoon in the small office next to my bedroom, the door half closed, late sunlight streaking through the blinds onto my desk. On the computer screen, the account history showed every expense my mother and Vanessa had drained from the sub-account over the past 4 months. The numbers weren't just numbers anymore. They were living proof of every lie. I sent an email to Rebecca, my private attorney, the one who had helped finalize my father's trust. The subject line was only 4 words: urgent, freeze assets. An hour later, Rebecca called back. Her voice was calm, decisive, as always. I'll freeze 80% of the trust tonight. We'll leave a small amount available so we can track their moves. But I need to confirm you understand the legal consequences if they try to sue for lack of prior notice. I'm ready, I said, my eyes fixed on the screen. Then I'll prepare a prevention order for breach of trust, based on the clause naming you as the sole beneficiary with full authority to act when misuse is detected. I hung up, my heart racing, but not panicked. It felt like stepping into a place where there was no turning back, only the choice between silence and protecting myself. That evening, Michael and I sat in the living room, the fireplace casting warm light across the walls. He was testing a pair of wireless earbuds connected to an old phone I'd bought just for recording calls. Not to broadcast, not to sue, but to have proof I might need one day to remind them I had never forgotten. Michael pressed play. My mother's voice filled the air, weary but laced with feigned exhaustion. Ariana, I don't want to trouble you, but Vanessa deserves a proper start. Ryan's a good man, his family is distinguished. Don't you want your sister to be happy? I shook my head slowly. There's never been a call from her asking if I was happy unless it came with a number attached. Michael set the phone down and looked at me. I could stand before the world to defend you, but this battle, you're the one who has to decide when it ends. I nodded. The wedding day. I had no plan to cut them off completely, but I wanted them to see the line, and I wanted them to understand everything they built with my money could collapse the very moment they thought they had won. I reached out to Lauren again, asking her to gather more details about the event timeline. She sent me the preliminary program. The ceremony would take place in the garden of the Fairmount Grand Hotel, the evening of the 16th next month, with 300 guests expected, including prominent figures from Houston's legal and business circles. She also sent a photo of the sample invitation. The gold-embossed words read, Vanessa Marie Whitaker and Ryan James Clark. Love is a blessing, and family is where all good begins. I stared at the names. No mention of me. No, beloved sister Ariana. Not even a note. I checked the sub-account again. The balance was less than 3,000. I didn't transfer more. I didn't announce anything either. I waited. 3 days later, my mother called. Sweetheart, the decorators say they need another deposit to hold the schedule, or they'll cancel. I already promised. If you don't transfer, the whole event will fall apart. I'll check my schedule, I replied evenly. From now until the wedding, send requests by text. She sounded impatient. Ariana, this isn't a small matter. Do you want to embarrass me? What about the groom's family? I cut her off. I never agreed to pay for the wedding. You and Vanessa made every decision without asking me. She went silent, then hung up. That night, Michael handed me a new recording. Vanessa's voice, sharp and colder than usual. That girl thinks she's better than us because she has Dad's money, but she's just a tool. This wedding is my step into a real family, not the shabby little hole she's hiding in up in Boston. I stopped the playback there. No need to hear more. I called Rebecca. Activate step 2. Lock every external access, including the sub-account. It's ready, she said. The order will take effect tonight. The next morning, the first text from my mother appeared. Ariana, something's wrong with the account. I can't withdraw. Check it for me. Then a missed call. Another message followed, the tone sharper. We need to talk. Don't do anything that will make me disappointed in you. I set the phone down, glancing at the wall clock. Only 8 days left until the wedding. I didn't need to act further. All I had to do was wait for the moment when the lights hit the stage and let them reveal themselves before I had to say a word. On the 16th, I took the earliest flight to Miami, alone. Michael stayed in Boston with the kids, as we had agreed. I didn't tell my mother, and I didn't let Lauren mention anything to Vanessa. My presence wasn't part of their script, and I wanted to keep it that way. The Fairmount Grand loomed under the blazing sun, its facade gleaming with glass and ivory marble. Limousines lined up at the entrance, guests stepping out dressed to perfection, each one carrying the air of someone invited to an elite affair. I walked slowly through the grand lobby, head slightly bowed, hair tied neatly, my green dress modest but not out of place among the crowd. I didn't need to look for them. I heard my mother's laugh from across the room, the same laugh I'd heard all childhood when she boasted that Vanessa was her precious daughter. Vanessa posed for photos by the marble staircase, her mermaid gown sparkling with crystal, hugging her frame like ocean waves. Ryan stood beside her in a tailored white suit, his closed smile full of pride. Together, they looked like they had stepped off the cover of a bridal magazine. The garden behind the hotel was packed, decorated in European style, arches covered in white roses, silk ribbons floating in the breeze, lace tablecloths, crystal glasses neatly lined beside menus printed on heavy, shimmering paper. The MC took the stage, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for. Please give a warm welcome to the happy couple Vanessa Marie Whitaker and Ryan James Clark. Before the words were finished, a coordinator rushed from backstage, whispering urgently into his ear. The MC faltered, gave a nervous smile, then excused himself. The background music cut off. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I sat near the back row, arms crossed, watching. Moments later, 3 hotel staff in uniform emerged from the side door, carrying card readers and a stack of invoices. One of them raised his voice. "We need to speak with the bride's family representative about final payment." My mother shot up from the head table, her face pale. Vanessa followed, her lips tight, fists clutching her dress. "The payment was processed this morning," my mother said, forcing a polite tone. The man shook his head. "The card was declined. The account has been closed. We cannot proceed until payment is confirmed." Noise swelled among the guests. Ryan stepped forward, confusion written on his face. "What's going on?" My mother and Vanessa exchanged a quick glance, then instinctively scanned the crowd. Their eyes landed on me. The look they gave was as though they had struck a wall. I rose, adjusted my jacket, and walked out of the row slowly. They rushed toward me, pulling me into a side room near the backstage area. The door closed, sucking the air out of the space. "What the hell are you doing?" my mother shouted. "Why did you shut down the account?" Vanessa's stage pride was gone, hair loose around her face, eyes flashing with rage. "You wanted to humiliate me on my wedding day? Are you insane?" I didn't answer. I placed my phone on the table, opened the recording app, and said evenly, "Admit it. This entire wedding was paid for out of my father's trust account. Without my consent, I have every right to protect it." "Don't you dare blame me," my mother snapped. "You sent the money willingly. Every time I asked, you transferred. No one forced you." "No one forced me," I nodded. "But you and Vanessa lied. Said it was for repairs, for medical bills, for deposits. Meanwhile, the money went to banquet halls, bridal studios, and your spa appointments. Do you want me to list every charge?" Vanessa clenched her fists. "You don't understand. I finally had a chance at a better life. You've always had everything. Dad chose you. Money went to you. Couldn't you let me have one happy day? You call this happiness?" I looked straight at her. "Happiness is marrying someone you love, not throwing a wedding built on deceit just to show off." My mother jabbed her finger at me. "If you don't unlock that account right now, I swear," I cut her off, my voice low and steady. "What will you do? Disown me? You've been doing that for years." Vanessa stepped back, her lips trembling. My mother slumped into a chair, hands shaking. Neither had the strength to argue further. I picked up my phone, stopped the recording, saved it, and slipped it into my bag. "I won't sue. I won't make this bigger than it already island, but neither of you will touch Dad's money again. You can explain yourselves to the groom's family. As far as I'm concerned, this ends here." I walked out, leaving behind not sobs but a suffocating silence. Outside, the stage lights still glowed, the music still cut short, and 300 guests waited for answers. I wasn't waiting anymore. My heels clicked steadily against the marble floor as I stepped back into the garden. The air felt heavier, curious eyes turning toward me as the door opened. Some recognized me, some whispered. Others just stared, trying to remember if I was even on the guest list. I didn't stop. I didn't look away. The stage stood empty, the music silenced. The coordinators whispered anxiously with the MC at the side. Ryan stood adrift among the guests, his composure slipping. His father, James Clark, spoke in a low, sharp tone to the hotel manager. I walked straight into the center of it all. 3 steps from the stage, I stopped, lifted my chin, and took the microphone from the confused MC. I faced 300 guests waiting for what they thought would be a perfect ceremony. "Forgive me for interrupting," I began, my voice carrying steady in the open air. "My name is Ariana Whitaker, the bride's older sister." A few gasps rippled. Some recognized me from family portraits by the reception table. Others stayed silent. I wasn't on today's guest list. In fact, I was never invited. I glanced around. My eyes met Ryan's, fixed on me in bewilderment. My mother and Vanessa had just stumbled out of the side room, frantic and shaken. But since this entire ceremony was paid for with my money, the inheritance my father left legally through a trust, I think I have the right to speak. Not to reclaim my dignity, but to speak the truth. I pulled my phone from my pocket, quickly connecting it to the sound system through Bluetooth, already set up with Lauren's help. She stood near the coordinators, her eyes filled with concern. I gave her a small nod. After one steady breath, I pressed play. The recording echoed through the eerily silent garden. "What the hell are you doing? Why would you shut down the account? You want to humiliate me. On my wedding day? Are you insane? You sent the money willingly. Every time I asked, you transferred. Who forced you? Can't you let me have one happy day? This wedding is my step into a real family, not that shabby hole you're hiding in up in Boston." Each sentence cut away another layer of the facade they had built for months. No one interrupted. Not a sound was made, only eyes shifting from shock to anger, from doubt to sympathy. A few guests quietly rose, their faces etched with disapproval. When the recording ended, I slipped my phone back into my pocket and tightened my grip on the microphone. I didn't come up here to humiliate anyone. But if I stay silent, they'll keep using my name, my kindness, my trust to manipulate. They'll keep staging this perfect play, then try to wash it all away with tears. I turned my gaze directly on my mother and Vanessa. As for me, my role is over. I will no longer be anyone's backdrop. No one spoke. James Clark was the first to break the silence. He stepped forward, eyes locked on Vanessa. "Do you have anything to explain to my family?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. She trembled, clutching her gown, her face drained of color. Ryan turned away, staring into nothing. James Clark looked at the hotel manager. "Shut down all services. This wedding is officially canceled. My family will demand a refund and consider legal action if necessary." From the back of the garden, my mother screamed, "You can't do this. She's her sister! Traitor! Ungrateful!" I didn't turn. I slipped the small silver ring from my right hand, the only keepsake of my father, set it gently against the microphone, and said, "My father once taught me, some wounds must be opened before they can heal. And today, I choose to end it all." I placed the microphone down and quietly walked off the stage. Behind me rose the noise of people murmuring, my mother's shrieks, Vanessa collapsing into sobs, chairs scraping as some guests left. But it all blurred into silence as if sealed behind an invisible door. I stepped through the ornate flower arch, beneath the words, "Forever begins today." And I walked away, not to abandon everything behind me, but to begin again for myself. I didn't look back as I left the stage. My steps were slow, steady, passing rows of guests, rising in uneasy silence, passing Ryan's dazed stare, passing the stunned face of his powerful father. But as I neared the arch, my hand faltered at the edge of my dress. Something inside me couldn't let it end in silence. I turned back. Not for them. For the people who had witnessed everything, who still needed clarity. I walked back onto the stage, my voice no longer carrying anger or hurt. It was simply the voice of someone who had reached the end of her limit, then turned to build something else. Thank you for listening. I understand you came today to witness a wedding, a so-called new beginning. So let me share a piece of that beginning. I typed quickly on my phone and pressed send. The LED screen behind the stage meant to show romantic images of the couple lit up with the logo and name, the James Whittaker Scholarship Fund for Equal Education Opportunities. I turned back to the crowd, microphone in hand. For the past 4 months, instead of letting my father's inheritance be drained through false pretenses, I've redirected most of the fund into an educational foundation. Named after him, James Whittaker, it was established 3 weeks ago and has already begun reviewing its first applications. Applause broke out in one corner, at first scattered, then swelling. I looked at the faces. Some moved, some nodding, some bowed as if questioning themselves for past judgments. My mother stood at the garden's edge, her face red, her eyes blazing with fury and panic. Vanessa collapsed on the grass, her gown wilted, eyes wide with disbelief. I no longer looked at them. I looked at the guests, those invited here as friends, partners, family. And I spoke slowly, clearly. Family does not mean sacrificing your dignity. None of us were born to be the backdrop for someone else's dream in silence. I stayed silent for too long, until I realized silence itself is a form of complicity. More applause rose, elderly guests nodded. A woman in a purple dress in the front row dabbed tears from her eyes. I recognized her, Ryan's mother. Photographers and reporters, always present at such events, had already pulled out their phones, capturing every moment. By morning, this would flood social media and the news. I stepped down from the stage. As I passed Ryan, I paused briefly. His eyes were clouded, his shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded lightly. Live truthfully, Ryan, and never let reputation replace conscience. I didn't wait for his reply. Passing my mother and Vanessa, I heard her hiss, "You destroyed everything." I paused for one beat, but didn't turn back. No, Mother. It was rotten long ago. I only pulled down the curtain. I walked past them as though through a rusted gate closed forever, with no need to reopen. By the time I left the hotel grounds, voices still buzzed, cameras still flashed, whispers rippled like small waves against the shore. I called a cab, sat in silence, watching Miami's city lights slide past the window. Inside me there was no anger, no regret, no sense of triumph. Only one feeling remained: relief. My father once said, "Justice isn't always the gavel striking a table. Sometimes it's simply the right choice, made quietly." And today I made my choice, not for revenge, but to close a chapter I had carried too long in silence. No one would use the word family as a chain to bind me to a role I never chose. I returned to Boston the next morning, on an early flight through the cold mist. On the drive home, Michael didn't ask questions, only glanced at me now and then, through the rearview mirror with the same patient gentleness as always. I stayed quiet, not from exhaustion, but from listening inward, to see if anything remained unhealed. The red brick house at the end of our small street looked as peaceful as any Sunday morning. The children were on the living room floor with Legos. When they saw me, they rushed into my arms. I knelt, holding them tight, as if reclaiming the tender part of myself forced into strength for too long. I had braced for a storm after yesterday, but no calls came from my mother, no texts from Vanessa. Silence came quickly, complete, as if they had never existed. That afternoon, I sat by the window, opened my laptop, and found a new notification from the scholarship fund bearing my father's name. The subject line read in bold, "Letter of thanks from the first scholarship recipient, Western New York University." I clicked it open. The letter was from a student named Maya Lung. She wrote of growing up in a Rochester housing project, her mother a janitor, her father lost to cancer in middle school. Maya excelled in school, but never dreamed of college. Her family couldn't afford it. She wrote, "Without the James Whittaker Scholarship, I would never have dared set foot in a university. I would never have believed anyone could choose to place faith in someone like me, someone with nothing but patience and eyes always looking ahead." I read it over and over, my vision blurred not from the screen's brightness, but from something deeper stirring within. Tears slid down, no longer carrying anger or pain. They were tears of release, of lightness, of reconnecting with the most human part of myself. Michael came in and saw me crying. He didn't ask why. He simply drew me into his arms, his hand gently patting my back like soothing a child. "You've freed yourself from the chains," he whispered, "and you've given life to those who were never chosen." I rested against him, warmth spreading through me like sunlight filling my chest. The months that followed flowed like a river free of obstacles. I worked, picked up the kids, sat on the porch with Michael on cool evenings. No mother, no Vanessa, no midnight calls or begging texts. And though their absence left a gap, I wasn't lonely. Because that gap was no longer an open wound. It was a sky I could finally breathe in. Letters of thanks came often from students across America. Some studying engineering, some pursuing nursing, some training to become teachers, hoping to return to underserved communities. Each story was a seed of hope. And each seed made me believe my father, flawed though he was right to trust he could leave behind something greater than money. And I thought about the word family, the one I once believed in, absolutely. About those childhood nights when I lay upstairs hearing my mother and Vanessa laugh in the kitchen, while I quietly finished my homework in the dark of the tiny room by the stairs. About the hugs I never received, the thank yous I never heard. About the money I sent year after year just to buy a sliver of acceptance from people who never truly valued me. And I realized family is not about blood. It's not about sharing a last name or living under the same roof. Family is where kindness lives, where love comes without conditions. It's the arms that open wide, not to demand anything in return. And I already have that kind of family with Michael, with our 2 children, with the students I've never met yet still feel connected to through their letters. I don't resent my mother. I don't hate Vanessa. Perhaps they only lived the way they were taught, to cling to what they thought survival meant. But I am no longer part of that play. I live my own life now, light and clear. Each morning I make coffee, watch sunlight spill through the window, and know I no longer have to chase after a blank, distorted version of family. I chose love, and that love is the one thing that will never betray me. I share this story not to accuse or to complain, but in the hope that anyone who has felt hurt by their own kin will know they are not alone. I believe many people out there are still struggling on the edge between filial duty and self-preservation. If you've ever had to choose between keeping your self-respect or holding on to a relationship built on lies, if you've ever been burdened with responsibility simply because of blood, tell me how you feel. Do you believe family is something that can never be broken? Or, like me, do you believe true love is built on respect and sincerity, not control or unconditional sacrifice? I truly look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments, because every experience, every perspective, every real-life story is what makes this community warmer and more trustworthy. And if this story touched a memory or an emotion in you, please follow this channel. There are many more things I want to share with you, pieces of life, of family, of choices that may seem small but can change an entire lifetime. Thank you for listening. And I hope you'll stay, so we can walk the road ahead together.